Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today's topic is probably going to be a quicker one tonight, but it's a topic that I've always found quite fascinating, and it's really right in the description. Are shorter words apropos? So, a common saying or common thing across, I think, most industries these days is always use the shorter word. If you're in a situation of, do I use the big word or the little word? They say use the shorter word. Avoid jargon, avoid big words, try to keep it a sixth grade reading level. Well, my question is that really the right way to go? And here's the thing. I love words. If you look at the English language, I looked it up earlier. Hang on, take another peek. But if I'm not mistaken, let's see here. Okay, there's approximately 171,476 words currently in use in the English language, according to the OED. Mind you, that's always changing. New words get added all the time, and old ones tend to fall by the wayside. Well, to go along with that, the average person's vocabulary by age 20 is generally around 40,000 words, and that number climbs up all the way to about 48,000 by age 60. So people learn more words as they age. In fact, if you look at it, they learn a couple of words a year on average from 20 plus. Um, so the question becomes, should we be avoiding big words? And why I think this matters and why I think it's a topic that people too quickly brush off and go, yeah, use the shorter word. Yes, use the simpler word. Yes, because you don't want it confusing. Well, sometimes I wonder, are we underestimating people's intelligence? Because the thing is, I've always been of the opinion if there's a shorter word or a longer word and all else is the same, sure, use the shorter one. Yes, avoid jargon, especially in a context where the people you're speaking to may not have the same foundation, not understand, or have the same background. You don't want to confuse your audience. But where I see this runs into constant trouble is in most cases, when you have a shorter word or a longer word, it's not just a question of which one's shorter. There's a difference in the meaning of the words. And quite frequently, there's nuanced meanings to words. And there is almost always a specific word that is correct in almost any context within the English language. And that's one of the beauties of the English language. Now, from a marketing standpoint, you have to be careful because once again, you don't want to lose your audience. I can see, especially in B2C, especially if you're selling, children's toys, you might want to be very careful with the vocabulary and you won't want to necessarily get too multisyllabic. But at the same time, is it worth using shorter words for the sake of shorter words when they may not be as fitting? I argue no. And in my writing and my copy, I've always tried to go for the best fitting word, not necessarily the shortest. And I've gotten a bit of flack from that over the years. Um, for example, one of my favorite words I use right here in the title, apropos. Well, what does that word mean? If you want to get it basically means, is it it means the correct fitting, the right thing, it meets the context, is kind of the general use. What is the actual definition? It's very appropriate to a particular situation. So I think the word apropos is quite frequently apropos, but at the same time, it's a multisyllabic word that a lot of people may not know. So should it be used? Well, I think when you avoid it completely, or when you avoid longer words, multisyllabic words completely, you're honestly being, I would argue, judgmental and negatively judgmental towards your audience. The reason for not using longer words, you're saying, well, people aren't going to understand it. My thought is give people a little more credit. Secondly, if someone doesn't know a word, is that a problem? I remember growing up, it was very simple in my house. When I was a kid, anytime I'd ask my dad, what does this word mean? His very first response would be, read the dictionary. Or he would walk me right over to the bookcase, pull out, we had the big red dictionary, pull it out, and he had me look up the word, and I'd read the definition. And through doing that over the years, and it's a practice I still do to this day, when I run into a new word I'm not familiar with, I look it up. Through the years, that really helped my vocabulary. It expanded it in ways beyond what I would get just through my education, through watching television or general conversation. And one of the things I learned, and through reading books, one of the things I learned is there are many, many, many words in the English language that aren't used very often, but have very specific meanings that are quite important or really get a point across in exactly the way you want. Now, there's the flip side. When you do use a word that has a specific meaning, but it may not be the most commonly used word in the situation, you run into the issue of misunderstanding. It's something I've run into as well. You'll use one of these words, and people who don't understand the definition will apply the definition in their own mind of that word to it without it necessarily being correct. And there you can run into confusion. So you might go, well, yeah, you want to avoid all confusion. But once again, are you doing people any favors? Are we dumbing down society in general by always going for the lowest common denominator? Is there a time and place for bigger words? Should it always be used? Should it be the onus on the reader to when they come across a word they may not understand to look it up? Well, my thought is yes, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing for people to learn new words. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean you want to go and intentionally confuse your audience, and you also don't want to come across as arrogant, or you don't want to present yourself as being high and mighty above people type thing due to your eloquent vocabulary. But at the same time, in most cases, that's not going to be the case. You're going to use these larger words because they have a very specific meaning. So the question is, how do you make the call? Well, my thought is think of your audience. Who are you talking to? If you're in B2B, right? I would say err towards the larger word, not the smaller one. Most people in B2B are going to be college educated. They're working in, companies that are selling to other companies, and they're going to have a good grasp of the English language. And if they don't, the onus should be on them to look up the definition of a word if they don't know. Now, once again, you're not doing this in a context to intentionally confuse. You don't want to make life hard for your, listener, viewer, reader, whatever it may be. Yet at the same time, you do want to use the right word for the right situation. Otherwise, why do the words even exist? And so, if in marketing we ignore every large word, every multisyllabic word, and we always go for the lowest common denominator, are we oversimplifying to the point where we actually end up giving an image of our company, our product, whatever it is we're talking about, that is overly simplistic? And should this only matter within, say, like a B2B context? Well, my thought is no. Across context, use the correct word. Use the one that is most fitting to the situation. Use the word that is apropos. Now, what if people don't understand it and they come back and they say, oh, well, this or that? Well, we've created a culture of simplicity. We've developed a culture of sixth grade reading level. You watch TV, you read the newspaper, it's all very simplified. Yet at the same time, that simplification, I would argue, is an oversimplification. And we've lost a lot of the nuance of the English language. And I think if we bring back some of that nuance by using the correct words for correct meaning, I think it'd be something that can be an overall benefit to society. And I think for a brand, it can actually make you present, or basically, it can present your brand as being not stronger, not once again. Let me see if I can find the correct word. Something I concern myself with. It can, well, it keeps you from looking like you are once again catering to the lowest common denominator, which I don't think is ever the right way to go. You always want to cater to your audience. So once again, think about who your audience is. In B2B tech, for example, that's where I do most of my work. Your audience is college educated professionals. They should be comfortable with big words, as long as, once again, it's the correct word. If you're marketing to children, yes, go smaller, but don't underestimate the general public either. I don't think we should be oversimplifying our language just to avoid the risk of confusing someone. Because, as I said as a kid, it was go to the dictionary and look it up. It's gotten a lot easier now. Now you can literally ask your phone, you could type it into Google, you could type it into an AI. You can learn almost any word instantaneously. And I think as you do that, you expand vocabulary. And as vocabulary expands, people learn more how to use the language to actually get across their meaning. And that kind of comes to the last point of it is at the end of the day, what's the point of communication? Well, it's to convey meaning, right? You want someone else to understand what it is you want them to understand. Well, how do you do that? You make sure they understand the language you're using, the context it's in, and the definition of those words. You oversimplify, you risk oversimplifying your message. Whereas if you overcomplicate, you risk losing your audience. But once again, our society always errs on the side of oversimplification. And I would argue, I think it's time to start erring more on the side of overcomplication because it's so easy to get a definition now. It's so easy to learn more. There's no reason to cater to that lowest common denominator. So I think when you're trying to get information across, don't go for the simpler word. Instead, go for the word that's more apropos. That's all I got for you today. I plan to see you all again tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. And once again, if anyone has any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'd be happy to answer them. Take care. God bless.